Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Obscure Arc. My name is Jared, and I'm here with my co-host Emre. How are you doing?
Good, good. How about yourself, Jared?
A lot happier for a lighter month of anime, and also not only in terms of like episodes and we talk about that a decent bit, but also just it's a lot more fun this month. Like a lot more upbeat, and a lot for at least for our two Force watches, we're able to kind of just enjoy anime for being anime. If you know what I
Yeah.
mean.
Yep. Kind of also getting into the holiday season with a more upbeat things as well instead of being depressed, I
For sure.
guess.
I mean, like both of these, our shared watch is for sure serious, but both of these shows kind of lean into being serious at times. But I do think that um, something that I really appreciate about these two shows for our Force watches is they're just being able to like appreciate and have fun with anime. As someone who leans into having very serious shows be like my
Mm.
highest recommendations more often than not, it's relaxing. It's very nice to have. And I truly love. I would say I love both of the Force Watches we had this season. So, to first just get into my Force Watch, as per usual, we're talking about Lycoris Recoil. Lycoris Recoil was produced by, or the studio was A1 Productions in spring 2022. If you don't know A1 Productions, we've talked about them before. They did 86. They've also done Solo Leveling, Sword Art Online, Your Lie in April, Kaguya-sama, the big guns. They're one of the bigger studios nowadays, that especially doing a lot of larger projects. Lycoris Recoil was produced by Aniplex, BS11, ABC Animation, and it's actually an anime original. But more on that later. The writer was Asura, who has basically only done one other work. That work was Bento, or Bento. I don't know exactly what it is, but I believe it's Bento. In 2011. This is basically, like, Lycoris Recoil is basically his only other work that I've seen. And I'm sure maybe he's done some writing elsewhere, but in terms of, in the scope of film and animation, this is all he's got. For music, we have Mutsuke Shuhei. But it's also technically No Name, which is a studio that is, I'm going to have it written on screen because it's spelled very weirdly, as you can see in the document, Emre.
Yeah.
Uh, Shuhei is weird because he is under the studio, but like he does his own work as well. I think he mostly does his work under No Name now. But to give you an idea, he's done To Be Hero X, which is a very popular Chinese animation that finished up recently. That's also an animation original. Civis, The Sound of Heroes, which is a seasonal currently. And more importantly, Spy X Family. So that just kind of speaks for itself. Spy X Family, his work on that show is, phenomenal. And generally, No Name has done like very little. I think they were more recently formed
Yeah.
music production house, but yeah. The director is Shingo Adachi, who hasn't really directed before. He's done mainly character design work for things like Sword Art Online, Mega Man Star Force, and Working, which random thing is I actually watched like 2 episodes of Working recently.
Okay.
It's not that good. It's kind of fun, but it's not that good. It's very much like 20 or like, late aughts, early 10s anime tropes.
My guy coming in with hot opinions from the get go.
No, I mean, I think most of the people who watch Working know it's like not amazing, but it's like
Yeah.
fun. And I'm
It is
sure there's
fun.
people who really like it. And Adachi's also done some like key animation, but like very sparingly. So it's interesting to see him get on this project. And it's a lot of like the classic, like and someone in A1 or someone in a studio kind of works their way up the ranks and kind of gets the reins on a project. The sound director is Kohei Yoshida, who has done a ton of things, primarily A1, but other things such as Dungeon Meshi, Odd Taxi, Maken, Too Many Losing Heroines, one of my personal favorites, and Dusk Beyond the End of the World. You can watch Lycoris Recoil on Crunchyroll and other means, but to talk about what Lycoris Recoil is, which I'll often be calling Lico Rico because that's what it's called in the show, I personally think that Lico Rico is everything that anime is supposed to be. It's action, it's slice of life, it's cute girls doing cute things, and ultimately questions the stability of the Japanese psyche. Just the usual stuff we
Yeah.
talk about in anime.
Yeah.
Lico Rico is incredibly charming and has some of the best main character chemistry that I've seen. A1 Productions continues to impress me with some of the most consistent production value you'll find in the market. And above all else, Lico Rico's fun. And while it does have its serious moments, the show really never shies away from its whimsical nature and kind of the whole vibe. It's really a vibe is the best way for me to describe it these
No,
days.
that is true.
The setting is kind of a perfecter futuristic Japan that is more or less spy sci-fi type thing. The most enjoyable part of Lycoris for me is that it's kind of split between slice of life and action. I think some people might find it jarring, but I kind of feel like it's very invigorating, kind of similar to Persona. Very pretty arts, you know. It's very clean, and it's. I think the one thing about Lico Rico's production value that I can say more than any other show is that it's consistent and it's very high, and that's very rare because a lot of
Yeah.
shows you'll see dips, and I don't think there's a single like even like shot that I'm like, ooh, wow, that really dipped. Where I'm like, oh, they had to like make amends. It feels like they
Mhm.
had this really well planned out and knew what they needed. So beyond my yapping about production value, because I noticed I'm yapping for a while, I want to get your thoughts on this because this is another show that I presented to you that is probably not exactly in your ballpark in terms of what you might seek out. And for me, this is a show that I watched it during summer 22 because a lot of summer anime are very like, fillery, not the best. Like, in 22 summer 22 there was like Classmate Elite, Call of the Knights, Made in Abyss 2. There was some good shows, but nothing that I was up on at the time. So I took a shot at Lico Rico and was like, I wonder how it is, and I loved it. And I want to get
Hmm.
your thoughts on something that is lots of cute girls doing cute things type of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And lots of not very cute things as well, I
Yes,
guess.
yes, a
But
lot of that.
yeah, it's definitely not something I necessarily seeked out on my own. I do remember seeing the trailer because, like you mentioned, it was in the same season with Made in Abyss and all those shows. And, like, like we all do, I feel like we kind of glimpse through whatever's coming next season, anyways. Um, and I do remember seeing the trailer for it and being like, what the heck is this? Like schoolgirls, like shooting. That being said, it is pretty nice. I enjoyed it. It's uh, as you mentioned, it's not necessarily like I do watch life of or slice of life animes every now and then, or I do watch a lot of action actually. But like this is between that sweet spot. But I wasn't expecting to enjoy it as much as I did, as well as this being a really good, like, well done, high quality production as an anime original, which sometimes, as we know, they can get a bit more like less of a quality throughout seasons, maybe because of budget cuts or studio problems or stuff like that, which is not happening in Lico Rico, which is a great thing.
For sure, yeah. I think something about
Yeah,
Lico Rico, and just about anime originals in general is it's very when you don't have like a map when you're starting out, it can be very
yeah,
difficult to know where you need to place your goals. And something about Lico Rico is that it's a very simple vision. I'm not going to
it is.
pretend that it's like this incredible masterpiece that has done something so different and unique. Like Lico Rico plays to a lot of classics with very different tones and very different approaches, but like more or less, like it's a half slice of life, half action, sticking to a lot of the classics of what made anime. Like I've maybe talked about this before, but anime's origins were slice of life. People might think it would be action, but no. Post World War II, a lot of anime like
Yeah,
Saze-san as well as Astro Boy are primarily slice of life and primarily about comfort. And so a lot of anime's origins can be found in that, but also there is a large part of the culture that is action and like, shonen type
yeah.
stuff. And I think Lico Rico has a nice blend of the two.
That is, yeah. I do kind of agree. The thing I liked is it's not necessarily forcing itself to be one or the other for the sake of being one or the other. Like it's when it becomes action, it's not trying to, I don't know, how would you phrase it, like give trying to give us hints from, oh, like, but they're still in like real life. This is very real. Like it's like, no, they go full fantasy, it's like explosions, guns, like everything goes gun ho, like wild. But then when it's slice of life, it's really real. It's like them going out, I don't know, seeing an aquarium, like having fun, laughing. almost like also like teasing each other, making fun out of each other. The relationships feel actual slice of life. So their transitions between those two genres. It's not like a lot in a lot of cases like this. You sometimes get like a mediocre blend of the two instead
Hmm.
of having really good example of both genres. I feel like Licorico gives us really good example of both
Yeah,
genres.
part of it I think comes down to sometimes it's a show wanting to do both genres too much without
Yeah,
understanding the balance. I think we talked about that a little bit last week with Summertime Rendering, where it wanted to be both a psycho thriller but then
yeah,
also a like very character driven story. Whereas Lico Rico is understanding it's like we can't do everything with our characters.
yeah.
We're not doing everything with our world. We're not doing everything with our storyline, but we know where we need to push and what our balance is. And I think a large part of that comes from it being an anime original. I think a lot of people underestimate the fact that when you translate a manga, how long it's going to be on screen,
Yeah.
what panels are going to be there. Like, it's a lot of compromises you have to make, and people go like, "Why not just copy it?" I'm like, "You trust me, it's a lot more complicated than that." And in my opinion, when you see a manga, I've talked about this before with like manga type
Yeah.
editing, it looks really, really fucking boring. Like
Yep.
I get like, what anime was it? It was oh god, this is gonna be a really weird one. It was Your Boy Kong Ming, a weird comedy anime. But I looked it up and I was like watching or like reading the manga while watching the animation, and I was like, oh my god, this is like literally panel for panel, and it was like really insane of how uninterested I was.
Oh, I know this
Yeah,
one.
yeah, it was. It looks really interesting and fun, but it's like the animation itself just kills it. I mean, the storylines are also not amazing, but the animation just kills it for
Okay,
me.
I'm not
It's
gonna lie, I had fun with that.
no, no, it's fun, but it's like the animation really kills what could have been more interesting
It
because
does,
it
it
plays
does.
so flat.
Yeah.
And to talk about things that kind of kill the anime industry, I do need to talk about the importance of Rico Rico as an anime original because I think people forget that what pushes the industry is anime originals. I think you talk to a lot of people who work in the anime
True.
industry, they're going to talk about Evangelion, they're going to talk about Cowboy Bebop, and like, there's other shows that, they might talk about manga in certain regards, but I think there a lot of people that got pushed into the anime industry and really care about it, they'll talk about Ghibli and all this stuff too, which are primarily anime originals. Like, these are the things that push the medium and force us to be creative and do all of these things. So why am I talking about that? And it's maybe because of stuff I mentioned from last episode. Well, when the last 3 months of the year include a shonen show with a movie that basically outsells everything, like I was shit talking Chainsaw Man kind of like Chainsaw Man movie res. I was talking like, oh my god, I hate how like popular it is and how how it's gonna ruin the anime industry. Like motherfuckers, like Infinity Castle, like Demon Slayer Infinity Castle came out before and made way more money. And I think it's like second highest grossing or like of all time.
Hmm.
I was second highest or most grossing of all time for like, any Japanese film, not anime film, any Japanese film. And it's like when I see that and I kind of see the direction of where the anime industry, especially the anime movie industry is going, it's really a chokehold on the market of who is allowed to make movies at this point. Like I have still yet to see Virgin Punk Clockwork Girl, but it looks brilliant to me. There's a lot of problems with it being 35 minutes and behind the
Yeah.
scenes stuff and yada yada. But regardless, seeing that these type of movies and these type of ideas are being pushed less and less is very disheartening to me.
It is, but I also do feel like there has to be like a certain like set of rules. Like if you're
No, that's
releasing a 35-minute movie that will like, leave some distaste
no,
in
yeah,
people's palate.
for
Like
sure.
it's not.
I'm not praising Clockwork Girl like for doing that, but for me, it's I think also just like what producers are willing to budget for and what you'll be able to get for certain projects and all that type of stuff and what they'll see as being successful. Like, I'm sure they did want to release because also from what I'm aware of with the Virgin Punk series is that it's supposed to be like a series of movies, but I'm sure they're releasing it because they just ran out of money.
Probably,
Which
yeah.
Again says how we budgeting and what do we, even to say that, as I mentioned with Chainsaw Man movie Res, that shit was a $4 million budget because it's made by Mappa and we know what
Yeah.
Mappa does. Just saying that like what distributors want out of their anime movies, what they expect, what is being marketed for, and to see primarily shonens that people are going to not care about once like these aren't memorable stories, they're not pushing the medium, like some of the times the animators might cook, but it's like ultimately not something stylistically or story wise that we're going to really care about for like years and years on end. you're going to eventually really reach a point of monotony in the industry. And a lot
True.
of like, it's just the next shonen and it's going to be the next thing and it's going to be a lot of the same. And
Yeah.
that's something that's incredibly disheartening to me. All this to say, if you're going to watch the Chainsaw Man movie, maybe watch an anime original as well. And just at least balance it out or do something. Like, I know the whole point of the Chainsaw Man movie is being part of the conversation and the marketing and yada, yada, yada. Like, that's great. Please at least appreciate the anime originals that make this industry and watch, like, at least watch something like Lycoris, which is super easy to watch because
It is.
it is so much fun. Like, I cannot stress how much fun I had watching this show.
So okay, I want to kind of dip my toes into that conversation, as in how much fun we had. So one thing, so there are goods and bads, and with Rico there isn't a lot of bads, or like even this what I'm gonna say is necessarily bad. It's just what I've personally um realized going through the show is, first of all, it's like I said, really well executed, and like I feel like we both agree on the fact that there's nothing done on this anime in terms of production value that's under average. Everything is above average or like excellent degree. Like
That's A1 Productions, baby.
yeah, there's nothing like, oh, this specific aspect of this show is actually not that good. Like I feel like they sent it straight home in almost every field. That being said, one thing that I've experienced till literally the last 3 episodes, which we talked before, is that it's not necessarily a show where you crave like, oh, I gotta watch the next episode now. And again, this will change most definitely, based off of your personal preferences anyway. But I feel like for most animes, um, not most, but for a lot of animes out there that we pick, we have a higher like, oh, I need to go and see the next episode right now. Like I don't want this to stop effect. Rico is not necessarily that much, but it's when you watch the episode, it like check marks everything you want from it and like gives a really or leaves a really satisfying like taste on your palate. Like every episode I watched, I straight up, no kidding, I was like, this was really nice.
Yeah.
I'm like, that I actually enjoyed that a lot. Like, and everything. And it doesn't matter if it was a more like action packed episode or much more like slice of life packed episode. Every character they introduced, like every little event they had in that world, like everything. Like when I watched it, I was like, that's so pleasant. Like it's like in a sense feel good. Which kind of mentioning characters as well here, like those dynamics and their interactions and their relationship, all that stuff, which you already mentioned in the description, is like really lovely too. It doesn't feel forced. Sometimes they like there. I'd go as far as saying like there are some classic tropes they follow here and there for the genres, but even those, you're like, oh, like this is so cliche. Like you're not giving that type of reaction. You're like, I knew this was gonna happen because it's an anime like this, but they've done it really nice.
Yeah, I think something that Rico does well is it's all about the nuance in the expected. Like there
Yeah.
is a very strong foundation and it's very much like, oh, I've seen this type of action, I know these villains, I know these characters, but a lot of it also being because it's an anime original is what Rico does so well is the chemistry between characters. When it
Yep.
comes down to the writing, when it comes down to the performances, when it comes down to the animation, I think that type of precision and care can only really be done in an anime original because they can spend time workshopping. Like, they need to change a line. They can change a line. They're not, tied to a script
Stuck
from a
to it,
manga.
yeah.
Like, I mean, sure, there's some variants, but, there's more negotiability and, like, more willingness to be creative in those spaces rather than sticking to a script. And I think that's something that Rico really nails. Like Chisato and Takina's relationship, like, history will say they were just friends as well. But like,
There, what do you mean?
yeah, but like Chisato and Takina are like, that's like, infectious how much they, play around and have fun. Like, I love Chisato and Takina's dynamics, whether they're deeply caring for each other, whether they're having fun or being stupid in public, or whether they're at the cafe relaxing. Like, whatever setting they're in, they're able to bounce off each other in very
Yeah.
natural ways. I think there's a lot of times when you see two main character relationships where it's very one beat, or it's like,
Yeah.
it has to follow the story. Yeah,
Sasuke,
yeah, it's that type of,
Naruto.
yeah, it's that kind of like, they're friends, or like, they love
Yeah,
each other. So it's very, but like, there's a not incredibly deep relationship between them, but it is like, there's a lot of nuance in it and a lot of
there is
like
it.
differences and things that they have to care about. Like Chisato's, destiny as a, what you call it, like as a Allen children, as well as Takina being kicked from DA and wanting to go back. Like, there's a lot of like small things. Again, these aren't like incredibly deep, and these aren't incredibly insane storytelling, like, methods, but they
Yeah.
are very honest and very authentic.
And I will also say, while this being a 12, 13 actually episode anime, um, it because in a lot of animes like that, like they usually feel rushed,
Mm.
like the relationships or whatever. Like the establishment is either too quick or it's so slow that even by the end of the show, like episode 13, you're kind of feeling like it was lackluster. I feel like they did catch a really good balance between Takina and Chisato and how they kind of get to know each other and work off of each other's like reactions to situations and what they value outside like their relationship between the two, and kind of directly, what do you say, like become more understanding and in a sense engaging with that person.
And for me, that's foundational writing, like
Yeah,
understanding how to write basic scenes, but understanding how you are challenging your characters in those scenes
like
to
yeah,
make advancements either in like their storyline or their relationships or whatnot. And a lot of what the first scenes of Chisato and Takina are really basic, but of like understanding. Like, I think the easiest thing to think of is like, when Chisato's taking Takina around town, and it's like going to all these places and Takina being like, what are you doing? Like, what's
yeah,
your
yeah,
goal?
yeah.
And it's a very basic scene, but it's challenging Takina to be like, who is Chisato, this incredible, first, like, Lycoris? What is she doing and what did she care about? And it's like, oh, okay, these are the differences between us as people. This is what she values and all this stuff. And then even the thing like the shopping trip in the aquarium, like, I would say like that's one of like, it's really weird to say, but that's like a highlight scene for me of just like how much they have
It
to
is.
force to understand each other. Like, it's very comical, it's very silly, but they're understanding each other and where they are in life and what they want and what their goals are. And it's like very simple dialogue, very basic, but it's very clean and it's not wasting time. Like, I think there's so many different shows where they
Yeah.
have fun scenes, but they don't understand that's like, hey, you need to be doing just a little bit in the foundational background to be like, characters are growing, things are changing.
And like what I wanted to point out too is that it's not even only their like one-on-one interactions being like intentional. It's like, in real life, you meet someone, like let's take us an example, right? Like we yes have one-on-one interactions, we talk, we do this, we work together, all that stuff, but like we do not only get to know each other off of that one-on-one interactions. I see you interacting to the world around you and you see me interacting with the world around me, and you're kind of getting to know that person and how or what kind of a person they are, what they like, what they don't like not necessarily, oh, I like this food or I like this movie, but it's like what they react, how they react to different situations. Like that's how real life works. And in Licorico, that's we have those moments where we can literally see Takino or Chisato observing the other one interacting with the outside world, but not with them. For example, like the DA Academy scene,
Mm-hmm.
where like Takina just takes off, and like within that scene, you're not like that has there's almost no interaction between Chisato and Takina directly. It's Takina and other characters, and Chisato is just existing in that space, but you actively notice that she is noticing what's going on within that interaction, and then reacts a certain way, and that kind of storytelling is like really what makes it enjoyable and be like, oh, this was really nice.
Yeah, it's very high level because I think
Yeah,
something that when you taught writing early on is show don't tell, which is
yeah,
correct for a certain level of writing, but ultimately it is for certain types of storytelling, or basically most storytelling. You need to do both show and tell and understand when you can tell certain things, what I should be telling,
yeah,
how am I presenting it, is it interesting? And honestly, that whole episode of like the DA Academy, first of all, animation is gorgeous. Watch that paintball fight again.
yeah.
Oh my god, there's so many small details. Like there's some small details with like Fuki getting shot when she's on the ground. There's like small details with how Chisato runs. It's so clean. There's so many extra frames they add that make it feel alive. Like I think that's something
And
that
sorry, by the way,
what's up?
dude, get Chisato in a fucking flag football team or something, y'all. That tackle was crazy.
No, yeah. It's like the
Okay.
thing is that like there's so much extra work that A1 does to make every scene and every frame feel so alive.
Yeah.
There's no slacking in any of it, which is I just have to applaud of just how much brilliance there is with that. Like again, not an incredibly high level show with like a lot of things, but it's so detailed and so many frames that it's like for me it's like when talking about like the differences between like Chisato and Takina, it also is kind of about their relationships around them and how they interact with Mika and how they interact with,
Yeah.
DA and all that stuff and like their goals. And I'm gonna say we're gonna dabble a little bit in the spoilers. Well, I'll just say this is the spoiler
Yeah.
section. Chisato's destiny related to talent is something
Yeah.
that changes you as a person. And I think that's something that is not presented a ton in the West. And I will say that also that Rico is an incredibly Japanese story
It
and
is.
is arguably why, like, because Rico did well. It did fine. But it didn't, like, considering, I'm sure, the ambitions of A1, it did not do everything it wanted to. It's still doing pretty well. It's probably getting a season. Well, it's more than definitely getting a season 2. But this show definitely didn't do as well in the West, primarily due to its heavy Japanese values, which the first thing is being like, the Allen children dealing with destiny, dealing with talent. That's something that's very obsessed about in Japan specifically, like other Asian countries
Yeah.
as well. But really in Japan is if you have a talent, you need to contribute it to our society and do what is best fitted. Whether that's like, a lot of times like taking up the mantle at a, restaurant or taking up the mantle like, in business or something of the sort. Like
Doing
follow
music, whatever.
yeah,
Like you got
following what is
skill,
best
yeah.
suited for you and going in line. It's not about what you want. And with Chisato's, it's like for the most part that sounds all right. But the whole thing with Chisato and her destiny is that what if you're the best killer per se, and what does that position you in life?
Just pursue.
Yeah, and it's
Yeah.
just like it really forces you to question the the nature of the Japanese culture as well as like again I think I hate to say this, but a lot of weebs who watch like anime sometimes think Japanese culture is perfect. It's incredibly flawed. There's certain things that is nice about it, but like
You wish.
it's incredibly flawed.
Yeah.
There's another I think it's another Muxedo Task video that's related to like Japanese autonomy and all this type of stuff. But yeah, Japanese autonomy is like a really really big problem. Like basically they get stuck in a corporate like middle management job and they get stuck there for like the rest of their life. And I think that's kind of the position Chisato's in, albeit in
In a
incredibly
sense, yeah.
extreme circumstances, but she doesn't get to choose who she wants to be.
Like even like throughout the show, you get to see her like really well and openly that she doesn't want to be involved with DA because of their take on how they handle stuff. But she's kind of like you mentioned, stuck there. Like she almost has no option, whether it's her specific situation or people's opinion on how she should function within that community or whatever you want to call it. Like she kind of like corporate life, for example, in Japan, or the culture they have around like black companies
Mm.
called, it's like a lot of people want to get out there, but because something's expected of them, whether it's their families or coworkers or the company itself, like, or at this point, society itself, they're stuck there. Like they might hate it, but they will still do the work overwork, even like stay there, get underpaid, sleep there. Like it's, and even though they want to get out, there is no out. And Chisato is kind of in that situation as well. She's like, yeah, I'm not with DA, but she's still very much taking orders here and there, whether she likes it or not.
I mean, part of it comes down to, I mean, this is also, I love to juxtapose this with the Western perspective sometimes of the classic Spider-Man of with great power comes great responsibility.
Yeah.
And there's some truth to that with Chisato's story. She has the power to save people and do things. So
And
she ultimately has to be a Lycoris. Like, I think I talk about this with Evangelion a ton. If we ever get to talk about Evangelion, you will hear me say this. But Shinji, whether he likes it or not, is an EVA pilot. And whether he likes it or not, he will get in the robot and he will fight in the EVA. That is what needs to happen. Not just for the sake of the story, but for the sake of the world and who he is and how he self-exploits himself. That is ultimately the life that Chisato is in. She has to be a Lycoris, whether she likes it or not.
Yeah.
Now, how she negotiates that in her relationship with it, that is one thing. That is how she becomes the person she wants to be. But that said, she can't give it up for the sake of kind of the world that's drawn in and all that stuff. And I think there is this whole negotiation of how much responsibility do I have to the world and to myself. She has this beautiful line. And again, we are in spoiler section. So this beautiful line where I have so many more important things to me than the world. And I'm like, that's a gorgeously written line. Again, heard before, but a gorgeously plainly written line of just like, she cares about things so much that she's willing to give up on certain things, you know? And I think that is, that's something that's very beautiful about the climax. Like the climax isn't like insanely action packed. Like it is, but it's not like the action is not the focus, you know?
And that's the fun part. So one thing that I like about this anime, that I could actually even go as far as to say I love about this anime, is when the quote unquote villain and heroine like exchanges or interacts with each other. It's not only them trying to kill one another and destroy their whole existence or their world. It's they they fucking converse, which is like we have so little of this. Don't get me wrong, we have a lot of like, the world has killed me, so now I will destroy the world. Kind of like monologues a lot, but like they literally sit down, have a fucking cup of tea or whatever, and like talk. And you can see they are actually interacting and not like, waiting for the right moment to strike, in a sense.
Yeah,
Like,
it's more than, the thing is, usually when you have villain versus hero, it's ideals clashing.
Yeah.
But ultimately, what Rico does is its personalities interacting with each other and understanding, and that's what makes it very refreshing. Like, Majima is a great villain. Like, I would not say, again, not incredibly deep character storytelling, like nothing crazy, but he's a strong villain for what the show needs, which, like, at first it just seems like, oh, we're hunting the guns and blah, blah, blah. But ultimately, I mean, if you've watched these type of shows before, Rico is about domestic terrorism in Japan and talking about the vulnerability of the Japanese psyche, which I will probably talk about a bit more in depth in a show that deals with it on a larger scale. But there is like basically hints of it near the end of episode 10 or like between like episodes 10 and 13, like the climax part of it. But to give a brief overview of the Japanese psyche, it's not the best. It suffered a lot basically after the atomic bomb and basically after a bunch of natural disasters. There's this idea that peace in Japan is only waiting for the next big disaster to happen.
Yeah.
And one thing that then happened after World War II and a lot of natural disasters was the 1995 sarin gas attacks. If you don't know what the 1995 sarin gas attacks are, please look them up. Basically, the quick and dirty overview is that a bunch of plastic bags were put on trains filled with sarin gas, and then they were popped using the pointy ends of umbrellas. Sarin gas is odorless, and it is completely...
So you can't notice it unless you know how to notice it.
Odorless, colorless, you wouldn't notice it, and basically... like thousands of people got injured and lots of specifically train workers died in the incident. And there's a great book detailing it called Underground that details a lot of the victims' experiences with it. But the difference between something like that and to say like 9/11 is that the domestic terrorism of this 1995 sarin gas attack was it was committed by other Japanese citizens, and it was committed by a Japanese cult. And there's a certain lack of trust amongst other Japanese citizens sometimes. There's a certain, like, again, it's the whole idea of there's a peace that exists in Japan, but only for how long will it last? And that is basically what Lycoris is all about, and what DA and Radiata is about, is that we're trying to maintain this peace, but there is a fear that that peace will be broken. And that's kind of like what is being played at with Majima of like, this piece is
Yeah.
fake. It doesn't exist. We are hiding it.
That's what I wanted to mention too. It's like they're like, we have to maintain and like keep safe of this peace environment, but then the question is at the cost of what? And is it worth doing it at the cost of truth? Which is Maijima's aspect ultimately in this anime. He's like, it doesn't matter if you live in a peaceful society, because at the back end of stuff, like, yes, you don't know it, but people still die. Like, shit ton of bad stuff happens, kidnappings, killings, like whatever, like literal terrorism still happens. It's just that you don't know, so it's peaceful. They're just accidents. And that's a fair point to, you know, highlight and like kind of take attention to. So it's so almost like a struggle, and you kind of see Chisato not struggling, but not necessarily struggling, but kind of weighing whether that is actually worth it herself as well. Like I said, when they talk, like you see these characters kind of actually understanding each other, like, and you don't necessarily get that a lot too. So
Yeah, I will say the thing is, it's complicated with Japan, is that
yeah,
they both desire peace, like deeply
exactly.
desire peace, but also fear it in a very
Yeah,
fucked up way.
yeah,
Because ultimately, there is no such thing as peace in Japan after World War II. There's no such thing. It is a
yeah,
country that has ultimately been made to be more defenseless than they feel they should be. It's a country that suffers from natural disasters. It's a country that is trying to rebuild itself
yeah.
constantly. While having many successes, is ultimately scared about constantly falling into pitfalls that they've fallen into before. And I think one thing that I am disappointed in Rico, but understanding, is that I wish it delved into that more than besides like the final climax. The climax is great. Don't get me wrong. I
Yeah.
love the towers. I will say, if you've not listened to Takina's scream as the
Oh
heart is running
yeah.
away, I think legitimately top 10, maybe top 5 anime screams of
Yeah,
all time.
that's I'd say it's even arguably like a generally like outside of even anime realm like top list worth scream. Like that was a good scream.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much depth in the emotion to it. I mean,
Yeah.
we can talk about it on end, and it's just like, it's a great climax, and I like that for what it is, but it doesn't delve into the topic that I know it could be getting into, which is, you know, a lot more of, again, it's an unpopular topic, but it's like, dealing with, like, let's say, like, the, universal subconscious of Japan, like,
Yeah.
how we feel about people's perception of peace, which they delve into with, like, a guy picks up a gun from a paper bag, and it's like, I
Yeah.
feel a need to do something with it because my life feels so empty. That's kind of what they delve into, is like, I have power now. I have this ability to cause and change something rather than
And
deal with the
then by the
status
way,
quo.
within that small scene, they actually kind of show you the portion of their society that holds the power does not know what to do as well, because it's, literally the guy grabbing the gun not knowing what to do, and the police officer just prematurely firing and killing the dude even though he didn't did anything. And that kind of, that's literally like a 3-second scene that shows us like, oh yeah, like even the people who have the power, they don't know what the heck is going on. um, it's those hints, small touches of like things that they do in a split-second scene where if you like, you're not gonna think or process this within that second, but like it's after you watch it and like run it through your head one more time that Rico kind of has these, like you said, niche or small nuances in it that like, oh, like they actually touched to this doing this,
Hmm.
and it was just like that, but it still was there and
Yeah.
pushes you to think, which is a nice thing about this show. Like I said, that it's really elegantly done, and it shows that the people who worked on it and basically created this project actually cared for it, and it was not like a, oh yeah, it's a new payday, like
Yeah,
it's definitely not that, and you get that in every scene, every episode.
yeah. It's a great rewatch as someone who rewatched it, and I will
Hmm.
be remiss to say to before we wrap up, I definitely want to talk about the side characters in this, especially
Yeah,
talking about Mika and Yoshimatsu. Mika and Yoshimatsu's relationship is very interesting. It's a lot more complex. Again, again a lot of it is nuances, a lot of nuances of like,
yeah,
oh, Yoshimatsu's bad. Like it's not that simple. It's a
yeah,
lot of what did we promise to each other? What were our goals? We're different people now. Like, and who do I want to be? And what is a something that I like, absolve myself from doing, like, and then meeting 10 years later, however long it is later,
yeah.
again, like that's something that Rico does so well, is understanding that people change, right?
They
And
do,
people
yeah.
are different, and people want different things. I mean, that's Takina's whole thing, is she changes like the most throughout the entire show of what her goals are. And
And people will have their own agendas and goals regardless of the world
yeah,
too.
there's a certain tragedy, especially in Mika's arc, where it's like he does in his mind what is the right thing, but I don't think he
Yeah,
ever could have been happy because of that. And I'm very excited to see where season two goes with this show. I will say that there is a season two announced. While you might see on Crunchyroll something called Thieves of Time, that is a 6 episode season of 3 minute shorts.
hmm.
You can watch it. It's fun. It's good for what it is, but it's not season two. While season two has been announced, there is no date or official anything like that. But I'm definitely keeping my eyes out for it, because
Oh yeah.
I think this show is ultimately so fun. And there's a lot, again, I'm not someone who likes dumb fun, but when there's dumb fun that also has a layer of interest into it that
Yeah.
can keep me pulled in the whole time. Like, again, it's about that through line. Is a through line there that can convince me to enjoy the dumb fun? And I think Lico Rico does that in spades.
And again, it's with every character as well. It's
Hmm.
not just the mains. Like you mentioned, it's like anyone who's in the frame, they're kind of interesting, kind of gimmicky, kind of have that, nice touch to their individual
I
character.
mean, look at the people that visit the shop. You
Exactly.
know who they are.
Yeah, straight up. And it's like it's hella interesting to see these people interact with the world. That's how I would put it. Like you see a lot of people interacting with the world in Licorico, which is arguably, even in some like only slice of life animes, you don't get to see that always.
Hmm.
Like this, Licorico is literally a world that characters within itself interacts. So nice watch, nice watch. I can really easily recommend it to anyone who's like, oh yeah, I like action, I like slice of life, and I'm like, oh, just go watch
I
it,
think it's a
man.
great
It's like, yeah,
I think while there's complexities that if you aren't an anime fan you might not get, it's a great entry level for a lot of uh like, high quality animation, high
yeah,
quality soundtrack. Like, I was low key rage baiting you saying it was better than 86's soundtrack, even though I don't believe that. I don't believe that in the slightest. But it's the fact that it's very high production value and does a lot of different things. I think it's a great way for people who maybe aren't as experienced to watch something that is maybe a bit less comfortable than like Cowboy Bebop or something like that, but ultimately still has, it stays true to animation,
yeah.
and anime's origins, which I think is very
And
important.
then it's also a really good like if you watch this as a like a newcomer in the space, like the anime space,
Hmm.
and like kind of do like a research, how you would do for like certain words or whatever from the dictionary after you read a complex book or whatever.
Mm.
Like if you search stuff happening in the anime, like, oh, like why is this like this kind of thing, you will get a really good introduction to like Japanese culture and history and why a lot of things are the way they are in anime. Like it's also a really, in that sense, specifically for learning the anime culture and how it's influenced by the actual culture, is a really educational piece um, within itself. But
Yeah.
yeah,
I completely forgot to mention. Oh yeah, the reason it's called Lycoris Recoil is because of Lycoris radiata being the scientific name for spider lily, and that's why radiata is
Exactly.
called radiata, and licorice are called licorice, and lily bellies are called lily bellies. There's very small undertones of flower language,
Yeah.
which I love, but it's not very present in this one, so I don't talk about it too much.
Yeah.
But I do appreciate a spider lily show that isn't aggressively in your face about tragic, painful death. It's about death, but not about like ooh, painful, suffer, blah blah blah. And there's a lot of stuff that, again, the amount of depth in Japanese culture that Rico Rico has is what makes it Rico Rico.
So ultimately, good show. Easy watch. Like easy watch. Really memorable moments. Nice interactions. And then I'd say a really flexible way of conveying ideas and opinions throughout the show through different characters. So it's fun. I would recommend it to anyone, like I said. Though that being said,
On to the next.
on to the next one. We have, in my opinion, and that's why I kind of suggested it, is another really influential, in a sense. Well, not this specific one, but we'll get at that. And also really fun to watch, uplifting show called Trigun Stampede. Yay! Trigun fans, clap.
All 5 Trigun. Not kidding.
So, my recommendation for this episode to Jared was Trigun Stampede. It's made by Studio Orange, which is known for another animes or other animes that are also 3D, by the way, like Beasters, Lord of the Lustrous, and Black Bullet. Well, Black Bullet is, I guess, the not mostly 3D one they did, but it's way back in the days. And I feel like that was kind of a money grab project for them. I'm not gonna lie. But going on, it's produced by Toho, and for people who already know the Trigun name or franchise in a sense, it's based off of a manga. So this is, in a sense, an adaptation, but we'll talk about that.
Yeah.
Author's name is Yashihiro Naito, and he also did Blood Blockade Battlefront and Gungrave.
I know Blood Blockade Battlefront has like a
Niche
ravenous
following,
niche
yeah.
audience. Like they also have the best, I think it's an ending song done by God, what's the band's name? I'm gonna put it on screen right now. But it's like a band that's really well known in Japan that does anime endings. But they have a really popular, like literally the ending gets more views. Like that one ending is like really popular. It'll be on screen now, and I'm mad at myself for not remembering it. But yes. Continue.
Okay, interesting. Didn't know that. Music done, and I'd say music is really good, but it's done by Kato Tatsuya. So you did mention extensive OST, 80 plus songs here.
Yeah, some of these are like small sound bites and tidbits, but I was just looking at the
Which is,
OST
yeah.
and I was like, oh my
Yeah,
god.
I was gonna say that's like a crazy amount. Like I didn't notice it was that much watching it, but like 80 plus songs.
I think it's some small clips and variations. And
Yeah,
stuff like that,
but like
still.
still, it's a crazy amount that you don't necessarily see it all the day. Some other, certainly in other these other works, I never noticed that kind of crazy number of songs in the OST. So other works: Feature Diary, Food Wars, Doctor Stone, and your favorite sports anime, Free.
Funnily enough, I've seen literally all of these shows, which is
Yeah.
weird. It's a rarity because it's just like usually there's one that I would throw in there that I wouldn't have seen.
Yeah.
I will say, out of all of these shows, this is the one he gets to cook the most.
Oh, yeah.
Like by a mile.
He literally hits home run with this one, like in my opinion. Because I feel like music wise, like I wouldn't necessarily put this at the very top of the pyramid, but it's like cutting really close. So sound director, or in this case we couldn't find a specific sound director to name, so it's going to be the supervising sound editor for the project. It's Masatoshi Katsumata. It's his first sound, not necessarily a sound director on this project, but like he never did sound
Yeah,
direction.
he was on Summertime Rendering in Bell, but then he has like a ton of live action stuff, like
Yeah.
a ton of live action stuff. So it's like it's weird. I don't know exactly how to describe his role. I wasn't involved,
Yeah,
so
so
I couldn't
what
tell you.
what we're kind of assuming is they probably like incorporated him to this project because like I mentioned, Trigun Stampede is like almost 90% 3D show with like models and stuff. So since he's experienced in like live action with like basically sound based on 3D world, probably they saw value in it and like wanted him to bring that real life actors kind of take to the 3D animation realm. Um, and then
I mean, to give you an idea, there was a role for this that was literally for ADR, which means that they were
yeah,
how they were recording it was very different than animation.
exactly. So that kind of shows you they're treating it, at least on the sound space, a bit closer to maybe live action and different than animation. Going on, we got director Kanji Muto. So he's doing storyboarding
Yeah, he
on this
mostly did
one.
storyboarding on a bunch of other small projects. This is his first time directing,
And then
or he's done episode directing as well, but first time directing.
yeah,
You know,
like a few show, and he's done work on other shows like we mentioned this already, Beasters, and again from Orange, Land of Lustrous, and Terror in Resonance. So he is someone who works with Orange on their projects here and there. And, if you work on those projects with Orange, also considering how popular those animes are, um, like he's a solid person. And where to watch. So you can watch it on Crunchyroll, on Hulu, and on any and every other platform you can imagine.
yeah.
So let's get to the description real quick over here. So Trigun Stampede is a stylish sci-fi western set on a harsh desert planet where survival is tough and technology is half mysterious. And I will dive into that. And everything is a little bit of a mess. Nothing's great. Our main character Vash deals with all this unique world and everything it has to offer. But it's not always fun and sunshine as you can imagine and as you know from Trigun. This show has a bit of a different take than what some of you might know or have seen from the 1998 Trigun anime and the manga as well. But we still very much, in my opinion, at the very least, get the Trigun experience with the funny, whimsical, but like very nicely action packed, yet still, and actually for this specific one, much more dramatic journey or experience. So, nice. The setting is cowboy bebopish in some
It's a space
aspects. Like
western.
it's a space western, leans a bit more into the sci-fi elements, but also I'd say leans quite bit into the more like what would you say? It almost like classic aesthetic in an almost steampunk way too here and there.
A bit.
And then a lot of desolate towns, deserts, um, you know, moons,
Hmm.
satellites.
Occasional super,
Yeah,
super hyper futuristic location, but other than that,
exactly.
a lot of
Occasional
desert.
spaceships, a lot of cars in deserts, stuff like that. It's fun. Uh, it is futuristic and not at the same time. And 3D animation, it's I know there's a lot of people, actually including myself to a certain degree, that 3D animation in anime, especially when it's mostly 3D, is like a buzzkill in a sense because 90% of the time it's not great,
Yeah.
unfortunately. That being said, Orange is really good, uh, at least so far, with their 3D animations, and I'll go as far as claiming that Trigun Stampede for now is actually one of the best, if not the best, 3D, fully 3D animated anime we have. Again, so far is a like important word I've used here, but I do want to kind of
I mean, you also
throw
literally
that
don't watch Chinese animation, in which like
out
most of the
there. Yeah.
big budget ones are 3D. So
Oh yeah, that is true. So if there's and they're relatively new too, like within the last 2 year period. So like if
no,
I
it's probably in like the past like 10 years.
10 years,
I mean, okay, there was a big
dang,
push like 5 years ago during COVID, but past 10 years, China's been pushing a lot of 3D animation.
interesting.
So
So
there's definitely a lot of it.
in that case, maybe I would in the future
I have plans for us to watch some.
readdress that. But for now, out of every 3D anime that I've known and like dived into or heard people mentioning to me, uh Trigun Stampede is, like I said, a top candidate, and it should it shouldn't by any means push you away because it's 3D. Like you should go and watch it. Just go and watch it. But these are, are more production value informations you might like to know. It's other than that, it's your classic Trigun, which we will dive into its history and have a lot of stuff happens in this, but it's very vash, very gimmicky. It's fun. It was fun to
Well,
watch. So
for
what do
me,
you think? Yeah.
so I watched Trigun on the when it came to America type of thing, where it's like Trigun would occasionally be the thing on before like something like Naruto or something, or like it'd be on before something, and I would watch it passively. I didn't really care for it because
So
of
we're
not the
talking about the
show.
'98 version, by the way.
Yeah, talking about the 1998 Trigun, I was not very interested in it because it's just not my style at the time when I was watching it. And so I always saw it as like a very silly show with a lot of really, interesting gimmicks. But I was like, as a kid, not interested because I was like, I want to watch the anime I want to watch, which is primarily Naruto and Prince of Tennis. And so when I see Stampede, I was like, very confused because this show is a lot more serious and it's a lot more tragic than the original 1998 Trigun. Which ultimately gets us to like having to talk about like what is Stampede in like I think we can't not talk about Trigun Stampede without talking about what is Stampede in the world of Trigun, because it's not like the manga, but it also is quite a bit like the manga, but it also is very different. The most important thing to note is that while Stampede kind of happens but not exactly happens before the original manga setting, everything is approved by Naito. Like everything has been approved by the original creator and has encouraged it to be in this direction. And so when I looked
And he
up
loves it, by the way.
yeah, when I've looked into stuff about how people feel about like I sometimes will just check reviews to either get some perspective on how people felt about a show or just rage bait myself. I'll be like, oh wow, like people actually don't like Stampede, and from most sentiment that I'm aware of, it's mainly because it's different, which that's fine, I get it. But also it's like a lot of what it is like it's like I mean it's a similar thing, if not basically the same, to like watching the Evangelion rebuild and being like, I don't like this over like the original Neon Genesis. For me, when I talk about the rebuilds, I'm like, it's a different thing to watch than the original, but also it's like the rebuild specifically for Evangelion, you kind of are supposed to watch having seen the original because it references a ton of things, even though it is on its standalone.
Yeah.
So for me, I'm just like, I prefer that it's different. I kind of prefer that the rebuilds are a different way of Anno telling the story. For me, like a lot of the differences, like again, I don't have any personal attachment to the 1998. I like them, as someone
Yeah.
who is a complete outsider. I like Vash's new look. I like, despite there being flaws in the 3D animation, I think it looks good. I think my biggest complaint in the 3D animation is that the backgrounds can feel very dead sometimes.
Sometimes,
Like,
yeah.
like not only, it's partially because, desert planet, and like, there's not much to look, but it's like they really don't know how to have things that are interacting with the background and the characters without it being obvious or maybe a bit ugly and stuff like that. Like, the character models look good, but certain 3D things in the background don't look as good.
Which, yes, and like it's really situational. Like look, you said in certain moments, anyways, but like it's there are also other moments where I was like, how did they get that type of background, even though it's 3D, you know? But there will be, since it's still up and coming or being improved and worked on, some drawbacks of trying to make something mostly 3D.
Yeah, I
That
mean,
being said, I'd say, just to, hop off of what you said in terms of like the changes and stuff and most people not liking it. As a kid, I did watch some, maybe a little bit more than what you said to watch Trigun, but again, not necessarily. I'm not necessarily someone who went through the whole anime and watched every episode and all that stuff, but I was more than familiar with. It was one of the animes that would occasionally, or in a certain consistency, that would pop up on the screen. Characters looked cool, so it interested me. Um, I personally didn't have any issues with the new designs. Cause I get when people are like, "Oh, like this is Vash, like his hairs are not like a almost like a hedgehog or like pointy. Like where is the
mhm.
pointy yellow blonde hair?" And I'm like, I get it, but I feel like whatever they did, they really did stay true to the spirit of the manga and the characters. So
I mean, a lot of people forget that when stuff like this happens, where there's like a remake of an old show, a
mm,
lot of the people who end up working on the project typically are fans of the
yeah,
original, or like there is at least a creative head that is a fan of the original and will be in charge of staying faithful. And
yep,
also, like I said, Naito was more or less, from what I'm aware of, like either deeply involved with, or even I don't know if he was an executive producer. Like usually, what happens is when you create something, they have to at least offer you to be an
no,
executive producer on it.
I think he worked on it because there's a specific tweet he posts where he says um like it turned out great. I really loved it. Worked real hard, which I'm assuming that means he kind of worked on it
Yeah,
in some
I don't know what his
scale.
capacity is.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
but like, I don't. The thing is, if executive producer is a very specific thing, so I
yeah.
don't know if he was one or not. But regardless, he had involvement in the creative
Exactly.
process. Whether he was technically with the team or not is kind of something
Yeah,
that
yeah,
I'm
like
unaware of.
I'm not saying like he was with the team, but like him mentioning like worked hard means that there was an involvement and he
He was at least
likes
in
it.
meetings
So
with
yeah,
them.
exactly.
He was
So
in conversations, and that's primarily what matters. But like, I think one thing to talk about specifically with 3D animation is what, like, breaking it down to people who have seen 3D animation that they don't like, what they actually don't like about it. Because a lot of the times when I ask people, they just say it doesn't look right, and I'm like, cool. Do you know how to like dissect that? And they're like, no,
yeah,
not. They don't say it like that. I'm a lot nicer about it than that regard. But one of the main
right.
things is that consistent frame rate looks wrong. So a lot of times when you see animation that's on the twos or on the basically either 12 frames per second or like let's say 8 frames
Yeah,
per second, depending on what kind of show it is or what scene it is, it looks natural because like when I wave my hand like this, it is like not literally every single frame is like the smallest motion. It will skip and do as needed because that kind of plays for motion blur. And then some 3D animation has tried motion blur. It looks kind of gross. Most people don't do it anymore because of that.
yeah,
And so it's like, how do we hide this consistent motion? Like, looking a bit uneven, especially in our slower scenes. One thing that Trigun does, and a lot of things have done, is very dynamic cameras. You can see it with like the very first scene when Vash is looking for a bullet. The camera's very dynamic. It is moving around the entire scene. And that's actually one of the benefits of 3D animation, is that when you move the camera around, changing perspective in 2D is a lot harder because it's like, okay, well, now his neck's going to look a little bit further like this, and then his leg is actually not in the frame, so
yeah.
we need to
You're
redraw
drawing
this.
every new perspective from the scratch.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but when you have a model and you're actually using like an anti camera on it, like you can just move it more freely. And you're with the movement of the camera, you're adding motion inherently to it. So the stillness of certain parts of the frame look right. That said, you don't want to overuse it and you need to understand when to use it. So there's still some times where the
yeah,
stillness kind of can feel wrong in a scene or whatnot, or sometimes they stick too far from the background. But ultimately, that's like one of the strongest tools that Orange understands is like, hey, this camera needs to move and it needs to
yep,
like it needs to be with our characters and it needs to be part of giving the scene life. And that is like that first scene with Vash trying to find the bullet is like incredible for that, and it's consistently done throughout the entire show, and it's what makes the 3D animation work. That said, there are still scenes that feel flat
There are
without
especially
having that type of stuff because it would feel wrong in a talking scene to have the camera move a ton, you know?
yeah, especially in some fighting scenes where you're like when you see like I straight up have some scenes in my head where like you see the character from a more like far away wide angle and like because it's a wide you see everything behind as well and you're like that's kind of dead.
Yeah.
Um
Well, the things with like the two like rules usually for like, or like these aren't like hard and fast, but like
yeah.
you either want really tight
Yeah.
on your character for 3D animation or you want it really wide. So that you either, for the details, you know, either, okay, we're gonna have details in our characters, or it's gonna be so wide we can focus on our background. Having to do like a medium and do both is really hard with 3D animation.
Yeah.
Like, especially with lighting it, it's just incredibly hard to do both well. Um,
And then you gotta keep in mind that in 3D, when you go wide, keeping background busy or I guess filled enough or creating that feeling is much harder than doing it on a 2D scale. As in, like, achieving that, not necessarily creating that, but like achieving and creating that feeling of like, oh yeah, this background is more complex and filled. It's also because of like the rendering things as well. Like creating a world, trying to render it as well, kind of makes a struggle in more complex background designs. But still, if they're doing it, it's better that they take their time and do it. But
yeah,
you
I
know,
mean, it doesn't help that Trigun also is a show that inherently is going to have desolate backgrounds
yeah,
because of the setting, and it also doesn't help that because it's also based off a manga, you can't really just cook and make something new
yeah,
because it's like, hey, that wasn't in the original. I mean, sure, Stampede is doing some new things and blah blah blah, and like, you know, for example, like Roberto is a completely new character, but like, you know, there's only so much that they can realistically add or change and do, but
yeah.
it definitely hurts some scenes. I'm not gonna
Yeah,
pretend
like I
like it
was
doesn't.
talking more in the sense that like texture wise, right?
For
So like
sure.
you can dive it's again gonna be harder because it's 3D, but you can dive into texture of surfaces, for example, and kind of try to make up for that lack of environmental structure. But again, it's difficult. And I feel like for certain aspects they didn't have the most time in their hand. But
Yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
But to get to the story of this, because we could talk about 3D animation and we could
Yeah,
talk
yeah.
about, the
Yeah,
merits
straight up.
and demerits of it and Stampede as part of the Trigun universe. We could talk about that for like forever. But to get to actually talking about what Stampede is, the story of like the show is relatively like you've seen it before sci-fi
Yeah.
and it's relatively basic. And I think for me the most glaring thing to me was I was shocked by Vash's personality as our explorer of this world. Because when I've seen things like Bebop and I've seen other like space westerns, usually the main character is more like willing to grab life, like, by the balls and just go at it. But Vash is a very passive character, at least in Stampede's version. He's very much scared of certain things, and a large part of his motto is running away. And so I was at least taken aback by that. I was not exactly sure how to feel about because again, I like passive characters when done well,
Mm-hmm.
but Vash is positioned very weirdly for me. Like it's really awkward. Like I don't know
Okay.
exactly how to put it because I don't dislike it, but it definitely doesn't feel perfect all the time. And maybe that's because I think some of the supporting cast could be a bit better. Like
Yeah.
I think Meryl is definitely like a very flat character that I don't care about too
Yeah, she
much. At
kind of
least in
is.
Stampede, from what I'm aware, the whole thing is she's gonna grow and change. But I was very much like,
Well,
oh,
yeah, the grow and change part, I don't know how they're gonna execute that part, and I'll address that when we go into the spoiler parts. But for Vash's stuff, I feel like he's a character where like, cause even in the manga, um, all the way to the very very end, he is not necessarily someone who you know does like his solution to things is not necessarily fighting
hmm
or it's not his first response to stuff. He does it, but it's more out of obligation in the sense that he's forced within that situation where he's been put. But again, almost till the very, very end. He if he can get away, distract, or like avoid in a sense damage, he'll do so. And that's why I feel like he's standing in that weird point because he's hunted, like he's being hunted by a lot of people in the story. Like this is not necessarily spoiler. Like we're talking about the dude who has
No, in the first like 10 minutes, you see like bounty of like
yeah, a bounty on his head. So it's like he's pulled into that violent environment where everyone fights and kills and like puts like action and kind of their own blood and bone into the field in a sense if bounty hunting is a field. But then Wash is not necessarily a person who got like he didn't decided that on his own. He just got pulled into it. So that's why I feel like he has a weird
for
balance.
me. It's less that
Mhm.
because you think about like character like Spike. I hate to compare him to Spike because it's like my easiest reference point, but
Yeah,
it is my easiest reference point. It's like Spike does fight in comparison, sure, but I would say he fights in a similar way where it's like not exactly fighting but avoiding self-defense type thing, blah, 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 that kind of thing. It's less the lack of a desire from Vash. Like Vash is getting pulled by the story more than he is doing things in the
Yeah.
story. There's a lot of things happening to Vash, which again, I think is fine. I think people who hate on passive storytelling and passive protagonists don't know what they're talking about. But it does feel a bit like I don't get a feeling of what Vash wants other than like, he wants humanity's love. And I think we'll dip a little into spoilers here. I'll just call this a spoiler section, but I'm not going to
Yeah.
dive right into it. But like he wants, humanity's love. He wants like, everything to be peaceful and all that kind of stuff. But I'm like, I don't get the strong conviction from like usually like the thing with the passive protagonist is like there's got to be something that it's like that's the one thing they'll hold on to, and that will be like how they react is a very strong thing. Like
Yeah.
because passive protagonists inherently are going to react more to their story. Vash doesn't react that much. He just kind of runs away from the situation, and for me, sometimes that can make a sequence feel kind of empty. Like I think the one I think about the most is when it's with Rolo and the hunter. Like
Yeah.
that story tragic, great. I think it's well done for all things considered. But the entire time, Vash doesn't have a plan. He's just reacting and running away and doesn't really know what to do. And it's like sure, it's a good proving point for Wolfwood and like killing him, like being basically a mercy. I don't like that. Like, I understand that the whole point is that Vash is a coward and he doesn't, like, he's got to come to terms with it. And, like, this was a failure on his part, whatnot. But it's just, there's a lot of scenes where I see it happen over and over again where I'm like, I get it. Vash is a coward and he needs to come to terms with that. He doesn't necessarily have to kill, but he does need to do something decisive eventually in his life. And I think for
Yeah.
me, I think it's played on too many times where he's indecisive. And I think that there are times where it makes me bored of Vash as a character.
I hear you. No, I kind of get what you mean there. I also feel like that's a bit more like that in this season because we will be getting a second season because this Stampede like is not complete.
Yeah, Stargaze is coming out in like winter 2023.
Exactly. So
Or not 2020,
not
2026.
2020,
I almost said 23.
23. We're going back. No, it's like
It's because that's when Stampede came
yeah,
out.
yeah. So I feel like that second half is gonna be much more. We're gonna see much more decisiveness from Vash. Though that being said, I do kind of agree that for the sake of character progression, them giving that like that them using that dynamic as much as they did kind of at some point becomes like okay, like
I mean, look at like they get into like this is full spoilers. Like they get to where he's fucking like basically entombed in water and like nearly like basically completely frozen before he actually like makes a decision to do something because there's like his love for Rem and basically the love for the like humans can like get him out of like his shell.
his love for the game. No.
Yeah, it's just like his willingness to like, finally take that step and be like, no, this is my line. It's like, bro, it took you until like this far into the show to like stand on something, which I get, it's developmental, blah, blah, all these things. But it just felt so like, because first of all, I would say that scene was good, but
Yeah.
I think for how long you have to wait for it and for how like, because like, I mean, basically Knives toys with him the whole time beforehand. And he
Yeah.
feels like, I don't need him to be powerful. I don't need him to do all these things, but I just feel like I'm like, why am I following Vash, That's my question. Is like because I'm sometimes when I'm seeing
Interesting.
Wolfwood, which I think Wolfwood's story is great and it's excellent. I
It
think I
is. It
enjoy.
is really fun.
You sometimes question is like is your protagonist less interesting than your side character? Sometimes is something that you have to think about, and I think one
Hmm.
could argue a little bit with Vash, at least in Stampede. And for me, I was like, I really don't like it when that's the case because it usually means something went wrong with the planning per se.
Yeah.
And I think maybe that like they didn't plan for Wolford to get this much of a spotlight because I was like I preferred Wolford over Vash despite me typically liking characters like
No, I
Vash.
feel like they did. So I feel like in this anime, the way they brought Wolf forward as a character is different. I wouldn't say it's different in the sense that who like Wolford himself is, like his personality and all that stuff. But it's still very much a slightly altered Wolfwood we see from the 1998 version and in the anime, and like their backstory kind of changes too. So a lot of things we see in my opinion actually becomes more interesting for Wolfwood, which is I feel like derived from wanting to make side characters more interesting in this show, believe it or not. I'm saying that because of Meryl's case, but
Hmm.
um, I can see why you would feel that way. But I'll say I wasn't feeling that way, like necessarily. Like I certainly get it, but
I mean, part of it
we've
is that.
seen the strong, like kind of lone wolf, and like like oh, like I had to make some tough choices. And it kind of main characters so much that Vash kind of to me comes in like a new, like fresh breath of air.
Okay, well, I watch a lot of passive protagonist anime, and I would say that I'm pretty. Usually, what happens in those
Mhm.
anime is that there needs to be an interiority, a self exploration, and a lot of that is done through just fucking flashbacks for Vash, which
Yeah.
not horrible. Don't get me wrong, but like it wasn't until like the very last episode where they're like, okay, well, let's do the Evangelion type of like self questioning, blah 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 with
Yeah.
knives, and I'm like, it feels like he's not doing it himself, and I'm therefore not interested in him as much as it's like, okay, I'm supposed to be interested in your story, but not you as a person. And I think there's a difference between a character's story and who they are. And I
Mhm.
think for me, it's like with Vash, oh, like like I think the my part of it is also I don't love the plants storyline because it's very I've seen it before. Like
Okay.
the whole like oh we're abusing these like really powerful life like human like again, it's not a bad storyline, but I think it's not done in a new enough way with like humans abusing power type thing. Which again, it's a more formative type of
And
storyline.
again, you also gotta factor in the like this is not necessarily a new thing, anyways. Like
Yeah, but
it's.
for me, it's like because the plant storyline is not that formative or
Mhm.
not that new, and it's like not done in a very specific or nuanced way that I'm kind of like, okay, it's fine. It's not gonna pull me along, but I'm not gonna be hating it. But for me, then it's also like, okay, then let's look at Vash's character, and I'm like, his story is just a ton of flashbacks thrown at you in like that one episode with Rem, and also with the
Yeah.
spaceship. Which don't get me wrong, I like those things, but again, I'm not getting the feeling of why do I care about Vash as a person. I'm getting it as like a what his story is, and I think for me it's like because
Mhm.
again, in all of these things he's like so incredibly passive. It's like the one time where he's like, please let me save the plant. I was like, oh, is that going to be his drive? Is that going to be what he does throughout the rest? No, he just gets pulled along by knives for the rest of the show, and it's like he doesn't have his drive of like I want to save plants, like
Yeah.
And I think for me, I'm like, okay, either when you have a passive protagonist, you need to have like your one action that you're really passionate about doing, or have some
Mhm.
interiority or something. But for me, it was like when I see Vash, I'm like, again, I like him, I want to like him, but there is a certain level of he's not placed properly in the story for me to care about him. And I think there's just an inconsistency or probably more incongruency between Vash and Stampede.
Okay. Interesting. No, I can. Yeah, I can see that. I can see why you say that. Um, it's a different spot because this is one of the things that I mentioned before that I'm gonna dive in more details. That it's hard to like have a solid say, as in like, oh yeah, like this is like a obvious mistake, like they could have or they should have done it like this or that. But the problem with anything Trigun at this point, which is the 1998 animation and then the Stampede and then the manga, is that they're like three individual things.
Hmm.
Like, as in, yes, both animes are adaptations, but it's really air quotes because they have obviously a lot of things from the manga, but they necessarily don't at the same time. Like they both have their own iteration, and I feel like it's because of that that at times where we like encounter like a lackluster feeling from characters or like Vash specifically as the main character, it's because of the pacing or the way they wanted to or ended up adjusting the story and what happens where in comparison to the manga. Because I don't know if you know that, but
No, I'm aware. Yeah.
like the arcs, like the order of the arcs
Yeah.
are changed in Stampede and in the 1998 too. Like it's like certain villains come way earlier and certain stuff happens way later, and like the flow is changed so much that I feel like it kind of contributes to what you're saying right now in Vash. Like I feel like if they kept the way they made it but changed the order of when it happened, it could have turned out better.
Hmm.
I really do think that.
I mean,
The one thing that I'll say, like regardless of the order of the situation that I did enjoy is the it's the 1998 was like more goofy slash comedic while having serious moments, and this one is more serious or in a sense dramatic while having goofy and funny moments, which I kind of prefer. I feel like like even though there's all this stuff happening, it's still contributed better to the original source, like kind of bringing the original source's feeling to the screen.
I mean, for me, talking about it on a like objective level, like I know there's things that you have to talk about with necessary, like it comes from a manga and there's certain
Yeah,
things
yeah,
that
yeah.
it's going to have problems with, but talking about it on an objective level as a piece of writing without worrying about it where it comes from,
Yeah,
things like, for example, like millions knives, like knives, as a foil um to Vash, I don't really care about. Like it's so overly dramatically different of like Knives is this murderer basically who's willing to kill all of humanity and has no remorse and will like, when I saw I can't remember her name, but like I think it's Luida, the person who took care of Vash
oh
on
yeah, yeah,
Spaceship
yeah.
3, walk into the room, I'm just like, ugh. I'm just like, we get it. Like, Knives is a blood. I mean, I'm shocked he didn't kill her, but I'm like, we get it. Like, Knives is a merciless, bloody killer who's gonna kill everyone around him. Like, and cares only about his goal and like, has a psychotic relationship with Vash and only wants to manipulate him. Like for me, that's like so over the top. But it's almost because Vash gives nothing in those scenes that Knives has to give so much, and it's like
Mm.
I don't like that because for me, it's like I don't really care about Knives as objective. I think the whole plant storyline I've seen before, or at least they could give more detail about it, or like I think something that, for example, that could be done a lot more interestingly, which I hate, and I have to repeat again. I hate giving recommendations like they should have done this because I think that's always
Mm.
wrong. But at least they should have done something to the tune of like, what is this village's relationship to their plant? This plant is different from this plant. Because, like, when we watch the show, all the plants seem the fucking same besides Vash and Knives. Like, they all seem the fucking same. And, like, we don't see them interact or do things. Like, we don't see personality to the world that they add. And it's like, okay, well, if they have none of this personality, then why do we care? And it's just like, oh, Knives is just going insane at this point. Like, and it just Knives just basically kidnaps the story at the end of like the last few episodes. Like we're
Yeah.
kind of going at a certain pace, and Knives is like, "Nope, fuck you, Vash. We're doing this now." And it's like, okay, I mean, I get it. Like we need a climax, but it just felt a little fast. And I also don't. Again, I don't care about Knives. Like again, Knives' intro, I think is great. It's really cool. It's very cinematic and it's very interesting.
Yeah.
But, and I love his theme. But I don't care about Knives as a character. Like Knives is just an antagonistic force. But we're kind of forced to care about him as a character because sometimes in scenes with Vash, Vash is giving nothing. Like Vash is just standing there just like, oh, I don't know what to do. Like, you know?
Yeah. No, I understand. Like, I get what you're saying. This at this point becomes like literally a personal taste take on whether you enjoy it or that not, which you don't. I can't say I do necessarily as well, to be honest.
Like, I mean,
But
like, what do you think about Knives as a villain then?
I feel like he's an addition to Vash. Um, like I wouldn't say he is like a oh, Knives is a really great villain per se, but I feel like since they're literally making a coin, both of them together, like almost like two faces of a coin kind of situation, even if it's forced, again, because I have more trust in season two, I feel like this is the way they went with Knives, and thus I don't necessarily feel like he's bad as a character.
I just think he's too over the top. Like, I don't.
He's too over the
It's like
top,
I
but
don't need to see that he's ultra mega evil. Like, you know, like I don't need to see him kill innocents over and over again. Like, you know, like I don't care that human bad. Like
I feel like
it's a
it's
bit
just
much.
again, I can't understand those. I feel like that's to establish how fucked up he is,
Dude,
even though he has
after
his
he
own
destroys the
reasons.
town, I don't
Yeah.
need to see anything else. I get it. Like after he destroys the town in the Grand Act, I'm like, I get it. He's insane. He will do literally anything. I literally don't need to see anything else. And so I'm like, when I see it again, I'm just like, okay, got it. And then he does it again. I'm like, okay, got it. And then he does it in a flashback, and I'm like, got it. Like really don't need to see it over and over again. And it's I think because Vash is not actually adding to those scenes, so they feel like, okay, well, we got to put Knives in there because Knives knows what he wants. So I just for me again, I'm sure the balance will be better in season 2, but I don't want to say that repeatedly about a show that has a full season and kind of has like some
Yeah,
standalone.
again, like that's the thing. Like this is why we, like when we were talking about Rico too. It's like anime originals and manga adaptations, especially ones that are like Trigun, that has a history behind it, like a culture behind it, that has a active fan base behind it. Like have making an adaptation like that, even though we're trying to assess the anime itself, we can't necessarily do so without having to address and then consider why they kind of had not everything, not a lot of things, but like some stuff, or why it turned out like
I
that,
mean, when
even
they,
though it had to do
I
it.
will say,
Like,
I can't throw them that much of a bone. When they're changing the story as much as they are, they
yeah,
definitely could have found a way to balance Vash and Knives way better than what they
that's
are.
the problem though. That's literally, I'd say you can, like, for a lot of people who knows the 1998 version of the anime, this is, believe it or not, kind of more balanced than what it was, at least for the parts that I've seen on that one in comparison to this
No, but
one.
like my whole thing is like with Stampede, they're actively saying, "Hey, we are willing to change so much about the story." There's
Yeah.
no reason why they can't have made their relationship actually more balanced. Like, not even in terms of like
Yeah.
power dynamic, but just for the sake of like, what is Vash bringing to the table in this first act? And I'm just like, I don't know.
Self doubt.
No, but there's a way to explore that. Like he doesn't actually explore his
Yeah.
self-doubt. He's just I want to run away. Like he doesn't actually explore his self-doubt like until like they force it in the flashback kind of. Like there's
Yeah.
like when Vash is put in a situation where he's meant to struggle, he is static. He doesn't do anything except for run away. And I'm like, that doesn't, again, it's like talking about what we were talking about in Lico Rico. These scenes are telling you things about the character and they're
Yeah.
bouncing and doing, that is not what Vash does in any of his scenes. And it's like, you see that with Wolfwood. You see that a ton with Wolfwood in terms of like what, like, how he interacts with, like Livio, his, former, orphan friend, whatever, as well as also like how he interacts with the gung ho, gun ho, the gang members or whatever. Like that tells us a lot about him. Vash, a lot of the scenes don't tell us anything about him. He's just put in these situations and then he just runs, and it's like, okay, I get it, that's his thing, but it's like,
Well, yeah, he runs, he fights, he does what he does, you
no,
know.
but dude, like it has to tell you. That's the whole, like, literally the
Yeah.
whole thing we were talking about. Lycoris was like, wow, this show is so good because it does this, and now we have a show like Stampede where it's like doesn't really do that, and it's like that's the problem. That's a problem. Like, again, there's a lot of things I like about Trigun. I like the setting. I like how I think it does look pretty good, all things considered. Like I would say the final fight's a bit shoddy. Like especially like how dark it can be sometimes in terms of lighting, but like. I would like to say I like Trigun beyond the fact that I think Vash as a protagonist really doesn't provide enough for for how much we're expected to focus on him, especially with the through line of the story being deeply connected to him. Like he's like more or less like not exactly Godchild, but like okay, he is an independent plant. That's incredibly important to the story. He's like essential to
Yeah.
the story. So I'm like, okay, cool. Then he needs to
He is
be
literally one of the two.
yeah,
Yeah.
then it's like cool. Then he needs to have a lot going on with him, and it's like I wish that there was more. Like, because I like Vash as a character idea, and I like his story, but I don't like Vash as a like who he is personality wise and like character stuff.
Yeah. And I can get that, like I said, but that's why I mentioned a few minutes ago, like if you don't like a character personally, that like that's valid, but then and we are ultimately talking about our opinions, but it is our opinions. It's
No, but like my whole thing is it's like we're talking about like okay, what is our opinion like established and what it is? It's for me,
yeah.
it's like okay, my evidence that I'm bringing to the table is that I think Vash as a character, when challenged, is static, and like that's something that I think is like then you discuss that idea, not just say oh well, it's opinions. Like for me, then it's like okay,
No, I'm not
yeah,
saying like, oh well, it's opinions. I do like because you ask me like what do I think about Knives as like a villain, and like my response is like within this first season, because okay, like first of all, in the manga or even in the 1998 anime, we don't encounter Knives in his existence this early on, anyways. So since they introduce him that much, that's one of the things that forces Knives as a character to carry the
but
story in comparison to Vash.
dude, it's been changed so much. So like we have to talk about it objectively without
Yeah, no,
like we have to.
yeah, no. Like this is what's happening in the show. That's why I'm saying it. Like since they do that, I'm not saying it's not like that. I'm saying why it's like that. They're two different. I'm not saying what you say is not the case. I'm saying why that's the case. Like the thing I'm talking is the why of it, and not
But when you're
it's
saying the
not like
why, the whole thing is then it's like you're almost like the way you're phrasing it is like it's like almost defending the studio's decision. But I'm like again, the whole point of Stampede is it's so
the
different.
only thing. Yes, the only thing I say defensively for the way they did it is because it somehow, believe it or not, ends up having more content from the original source than the previous adaptation. Now, when it comes to do I know why they didn't made it even like, better or like an exact match to the source, like I really don't know. Could they have done it? For sure. But solely based off of real world interactions we've seen from the mangaka and how he is content with what's done for the Stampede, and now the season 2 is coming, makes me believe or kind of give them the benefit of the doubt of, oh, okay, like with 2 seasons we're gonna finally get to see the whole actual pacing and character or characters, not even just Vash, and how they intended to do it from the get-go. And this is benefit of the doubt, but that's why I'm kind of holding back a bit, or like being a bit more hesitant myself to like assess it with like more like decisive cuts.
I mean, I get that, but at the same time, I think there's a lot that you can already pull from what you're seeing from a
Yeah.
very clearly completed product that they spent 5 years on.
Hmm.
Like, when you've spent 5 years on something, I'm not gonna be like, give them three. We're gonna see.
Yeah.
Like, they spent 5 years in this project. They were making creative decisions, and I disagree with creative decisions. I'm going to like actively say I didn't like it, like certain parts of it. Again,
Yeah.
I'm excited to see season 2 because I think there's a lot of foundational things I do enjoy about Trigun, especially I'm mostly interested in Wolfwood. But like
Hmm.
for me, it's like when your protagonist is positioned in the way Vash is. I mean, sure, the whole thing is like Vash has been gone 2 years. He might be literally a different person, basically. But like, and I don't know. It's just I was so disappointed with how they treated Vash's character moments. Like he doesn't have character moments. He has backstory. That's
No,
it.
he doesn't have the highlighted like generic. Okay, this is where we know for sure that he's like upping his game, and from here on it's gonna change. Like that is a big lackluster portion of it, like you said.
It's a
Like
little torture porn. It's a little torture porn.
it is, and there's a lot of animes like that out there, unfortunately. But like I said, I'm still willing them to give the benefit of the doubt just because the franchise we call Trigun and that specific history they have throughout all the adaptations and the manga itself. I'm always on the side of being less of a hater and more of a lover, I guess, if we wanted to put it that way.
And that's why we
For
let
a,
people get away with shit.
well, you can say that, you cannot say that, but like I said, like, and this is a good dynamic too, like if we only bash on stuff, both of us, this is not going to be fun regardless. But again, I agree. It's the highlighted character moment for Vash and like the any spot that we can be like, oh, finally, like now he'll open his new page. It didn't happen. They they should have put it in there somewhere, which they had more than one chance to do so as well, with how early they introduced some of the villains, to be honest, or with some additional characters that they've included, or how they mashed. So that's the one thing. How they mashed certain arcs together. It's not even just order. Like they could have, should have done it.
Yeah, they had
Like
enough creative freedom where they didn't have to they're not like that bound by the manga. Like I'm sure there's discussions that they have with Naito, but it's like
no,
it's
like
like they have enough power.
and the only reason I keep saying it's like they have more source is just because literally the source, not like they don't have more of the pacing. They just took more material from the manga and then incorporated in their own way again. Um, and that's why they mashed arcs and stuff.
I think just
It's
to wrap up on Trigun, for a
yeah.
project with 5 years and for a project that is really ambitious for what it
Mhm.
is, full 3D kind of retelling a story.
Yeah.
There is a lot more holes in it than one might expect.
Or
Um,
one might wish.
Yeah, I think
Like
it's like I'm not that shocked that there's holes in it because I just
yeah.
am a pessimist. But at the same time, also it's like, yeah, there's definitely a lot of things that could have been done better. Not that I think the story has set itself up to where if season 2 is a success and they have this whole great plan and they
Mhm.
cook, sure, we forget about the problems in season 1. But I just see enough problems in the foundation of season 1 that I'm less hopeful than
Yeah.
I would like to be.
And then I want to add on to that um for whatever reason that has been the case with the previous Trigun as well. I don't know why this is happening. That being said, some stuff that I said that I'm saying right now is also because people bash Stampede
Oh, it's way too much.
like not even way too much. They don't bash it because of what it lacks within itself, like you're talking right now, but they bash it in comparison to the 1998 version, which is like, in my opinion, not necessarily better.
But it's what they
It's
know, so
it's
that's what they care about.
difference. Yeah, exactly. So that's my problem. I'm not saying like Stampede is generally. I'd say the production quality is better than the 1998 version,
Obviously.
obviously, but like I'm not saying it's like in terms of like anime quality, like everything other than production value, it's like so much better. It's great, but the previous example isn't great as well. So you can't if you're bashing it because of 1998, that's a wrong take.
I'm sure we will literally have this discussion when One Piece comes out.
Yeah.
The One Piece project. I'm sure
Exactly.
this exact discussion will happen.
Probably.
regardless.
So don't do that. I'd say give this one a chance, but
if you're gonna hate on it like me, who's
Exactly.
looking at it objectively.
exactly. Like if you're gonna hate on it, we totally get, which we do ourselves too. Like you can not like an anime because its own lackluster parts, but don't go out there and be bashing something you haven't watched or won't watch because some changes or altercations.
Yeah,
you know?
for me, Trigun Stampede has a very high goal and it doesn't reach it. That's why I'm bashing
Yeah,
it. I think that it's a good show
Yeah.
beyond that, but I think it has such a high goal that when you don't meet your goal, that is when I criticize you. It is as
Exactly.
simple as that. It's like that's why, for example, when you were talking about A Girl Who Leapt Through Time last week, relatively low goal, I don't really bash it that much.
Yeah.
Like I don't love it. Don't get me wrong. I probably like Stampede more than I like A Girl Who Leapt Through Time.
Yeah.
But ultimately, when you have that difference in goal and like expectation versus what reality, that is when I'll talk about it because that ultimately you as an artist are trying to do. You're trying to
Yeah.
make something that it lives up to your expectations and makes your creative vision come
They're
true.
trying to reach for the stars and kind of barely come close to the stratosphere and kind of fall back.
Yeah.
That being said,
Let's talk about something else that
yeah.
does not meet
let
your
me
artist's expectations.
let me wrap it up this part real quick though, just so people can get like a quick conclusion on the general take. If you're interested in a good example of a Japanese made like because again I don't watch Chinese 3D animation as much as you did, but a good example of a 3D animation anime or what it can be from here on, I'd say go watch it. If you like Trigun in general, like myself, most definitely go watch it. And it's, in my opinion, I recommended to you. I'd still recommend in the sense that it's uplifting, fun, gimmicky, witty. Not the greatest storytelling, unfortunately, but still gives you that classic Trigun feeling within that space Western world, which I could have even more of those. Now going to the
So going to
greatest movie of the all time.
disappointing expectations, we're gonna move on to a shared watch of the month, which was Angel's Egg.
Yeah.
I will very quickly run through the production because ultimately it's kind of important. It's not that important. So the studio was Studio Dean. This was made in December of 1985. I could mention what they've done. Doesn't matter because none of those people probably worked on this project. And Studio Dean was very different, but it technically did Konosuba, Fate's Day Night, Higurashi When They Cry, and Fruits Basket 2001. Again, not relevant, but if you care, it was produced by Tokuma Shoten. It is an original work written by Mamoru Oshii and also Yoshitaka Amano, who Mamoru Oshii was the director of this, who has done Ghost in the Shell, Skycrawlers, Urusei Yatsuru, and Yoshitaka Amano has done many art design things in animation that I won't get into. Sound director was Shigeharu Shiba, who did Castle in the Sky, Nazca Valley of the Wind, and the original Ranma half, not the Ranma half that came out recently. Music was done by Yoshihiro Kano, who's mainly done like very traditional composing. I think one thing that people take for granted is that the generation of composers we have these days go into composing being like, oh man, I actually want to compose for like anime and like film. Like there's people who actually do that with that expectation, whereas a little further back in the day, those people were mostly stuck in like, I compose orchestras and like, do all these things, and I'm not actually that interested in doing it for film and movies. I just do it for money. And where you can watch Angel's Egg is actually the new 4K restoration, which you'll probably find in art house cinemas around you, or like, maybe you'll find in other places. But yeah, this movie was probably hard to watch before then. Probably had to get a physical copy. That was not the easiest thing to obtain.
True.
So what is Angel's Egg? Because
it's the best movie we've seen so far.
Angel's Egg so badly wants to be a lot of things. Like it wants to be a world with deep lore and dark fantasy and a gothic aesthetic. It wants to be an exploration of Oshii's doubt in religion. It wants to challenge what it takes to be even a feature-length film. But ultimately, Angel's Egg doesn't get to really do any of those things because of one thing: money. Like,
Yeah.
it's really money.
Also, you could also argue kind of inexperienced too,
There's a bit of that
because
for
it's.
sure.
But at that time, it's Mamoru Oshii's first. First of all, it's his third ever product like that, like
As
a
director,
movie, yeah,
yeah,
as a director, and then his first ever non-comedy
yeah.
directing work.
It was after the two Urusei Yatsuru movies.
Exactly. So those kind of, again, I'm playing the devil's advocate from the get go, but like it's that kind of gives you like a more why reason to like you can understand it's lackluster.
hmm Yeah, I mean, for me, it's like, I mean, we'll get into it later, but it's like it's a lot about, again, we're going to talk about meeting your goal and what your goal is,
Yeah.
and that's going to be a lot of what this conversation is about. Angel's Egg is, like I mentioned, dark fantasy, heavily religious, lots of gothic buildings.
Really?
I would, it's hard to call it anything but like avant-garde fantasy, but because that's kind of what it
Yeah,
is.
like,
But
what are you
it
gonna
doesn't
say?
it doesn't do
Yeah.
much else. It's avant-garde
Yeah.
fantasy, right? The aesthetic of Angel's Egg is kind of the main talking point of it because there's not much else.
There's
Quite
like
literally,
there's like 13 lines of dialogue or something. Like it's
not that you can't have a good movie that does that, but we'll get into it in a second. But like the soundtrack has some moments, but it can be literally absent at times.
okay. This is gonna be controversial. I actually enjoyed the soundtrack.
Sure, no, I
Like,
don't think it's bad, but also it is quite literally absent at times.
it is, but I feel like that, and I will mention a similar situation for the Foley. But it kind of almost makes me like maybe that specific thing was not necessarily budget, but like,
No, it's intentional.
yeah,
I think
and
it is intentional,
that
but I
kind of
think it's
helps,
also
like.
I think it's also not for me. It's like sometimes I'm like that's not correct. Like that's not how I think you should do it.
Okay.
Again, like literally my next line would be like, and while that may be intentional, sometimes the audience is given all that they're given is a background to look around and like the thing that pissed me off the most about this movie is they have a background and then they just pan around it. And it wasn't like clearly a new frame or new something. It was just like, we're just panning around a background. And I'm like, oh my God, we're watching the same background, but just from a small lens for like 30 fucking seconds.
So you're telling me you don't like that? No.
Like,
just
okay. So pretend that Angel's Egg isn't an influential movie would be incorrect. Because it is. It's like, it inspired Dark Souls, like, the creator of Dark Souls, Miyazaki's like talked about it before. Or it's like, and it's like, again, like it's a very important movie because obviously this allows Oshii to, eventually go on to create Ghost in the Shell and yada, yada, yada. But like for me, the question I need to pose is this actually a feature-length film? Because to me, this is not. Even though it's like an hour 7 minutes, whatever the fuck it is. Like the amount of padding in this movie is insane. Like it's uncomfortably
That is
padded.
true.
Like, because sometimes it's like, oh, when you hold on a wide, we talked about this in A Girl Who Left Through Time. Oh, it's intentional. You're holding on it for a reason. Or like, the whole time with this is like, oh, you're doing it for the background. Motherfucker, when it's the 20th shot and we're panning around a background, we get it. We're looking at the background, Yeah. And it's like, for me, it's like this could have been done, like the same feeling and idea could have been done in 30 minutes. With the same feeling of like, long, slow existential tread. I think it could have been done 30, maybe 40 minutes.
Yeah, that could have been that would be one of the very few movies that I'd be okay with it being 40 minutes and also being like satisfying. 1 hour is
Wasting my motherfucking time. Like, that is my thing. It's just like, it is a lack of respect to the audience, I think, when you do something like
my
this.
guy going hard.
No, I think it's
Okay.
legitimately a lack of respect for the audience. Because because the difference between trying to get a short film into theaters versus a quote unquote feature film into theaters is the whole selling point. Because then you make your money back if it gets into theaters. Spoiler alert: this didn't go into theaters when it released. It went straight to DVD and nearly bankrupted them.
Yeah,
That
true.
said, that is, in my opinion, a completely clear planning failure, which is due to the lack of. I truly believe that this movie was made with a shot list and not a script. Like, I'm sure a script was kind of involved, but it was almost like, we want these looking shots and this is the selling point and the aesthetic and all these things. But like, they didn't have a good through line. They didn't have a strong pulling point. Like, a lot of people, like, I felt like I was going insane when I was reading reviews about this, where people be like, it was my favorite movie of all time. I've legitimately seen a couple of people say that.
Dude, I felt him talking. I felt bad about how he talks about Trigun, but now I feel worse that
Oh
I've
no, no,
heard you
like
for.
you have to understand. It's like people were saying this is their favorite movie of all time,
Uh,
and like it reminds me that there's like a sect of like cinephile type people where it's
okay.
like they think if something is low dialogue, quote unquote, mostly about interpretation
Silent.
and mainly related to religion, it's inherently deep and interesting. Which, in my opinion, it's like the baseline storyline about religion in Angel's Egg is super basic. It's a lot about self doubt. Do you believe in the egg? Do you not believe in the egg? Should we be patient? Or, is the world going to heal itself? Like that type of thing. Like, sure, there's more depth than, like, Noah's Ark, Mother Mary, blah, blah. There's stuff that you can get into, and sure, there is stuff. But, like, it doesn't encourage you to pull on that because it's wasting your fucking time all the time just standing and panning. Like, no, it really is. It's wasting your time, right?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Like,
Like I'm not. There's as much as I always enjoy playing the devil's advocate. For this one, even on my end of things, there are problems. Even though I enjoyed some, like music wise, I enjoyed it in the sense that they obviously aimed for a specific feeling and goal. They achieved that with the specifically again just the scoring music side of things. Now, Foley and then dialogue mixing. As much as I'd like to say that was, decent enough, it was not.
yeah.
Um Especially considering, like I said again, it literally had like 10, 15 lines of dialogue. How problematic the mixing was, the leveling was. Like,
It was horrendous.
and the problem is, you gotta understand when you watch a movie for an hour and then it's silent for most of it, and then a dialogue comes in, and that dialogue is basically 2 times the loudness of what it should be. It hurts you, like physically, it hurts you. So that was my first issue, and then the choices of Foley. So I specifically pointed out that I feel like on music side of things, they blatantly went for silent moments to like disturb the audience more with the world's design. But on the Foley ends of thing, I feel like they've did certain things to not just deal with it, or like maybe budget, maybe something else, but kind of spoilers. Yeah,
There's not much. There's
important,
really
yeah.
not much to spoil. There's
It's like
one spoiler
whatever.
in this.
At one scene, do we even know the characters' names, by
No.
the way?
Nope.
Okay.
There's no characters' names.
Girl,
hmm
I'll say the girl eats something like a jam, and we're straight up sitting there listening this girl licking her fingers for 45 seconds,
Yeah.
and then, which within itself is disturbing enough, she reaches for the bottle of water she has, starts drinking. We hear nothing. No. Then she gets up, grabs her bag. We hear nothing. And that type of stuff kind of disturbs me in terms of it's, even if you did this on purpose to get a feeling, it's just giving the feeling that you didn't give a fuck about this project.
No, it's like
Like,
people want to glaze it because there's certain people, again, there's a certain group of people who are like, they are auteur glazers and they love specific, like they think everything they do is perfection, and it's like, no, you can actually be someone who created a great piece of work later in your life and not do good job on an earlier work in your life, and it actually be mistakes and like things that aren't good. Like that can happen. You're not everything you do is perfect. Like that
and
totally
it doesn't
happens.
have to be.
Yeah, and it's like, yeah, no, Angel's Egg has a good idea, but consistently fucks up in a lot of execution. And it also doesn't have the enough planning and like it just simply doesn't have enough substance to sustain itself for a feature length film. Like it doesn't. That's like
yeah.
if this would have been a 20, 30-minute short, I would be talking about it in such a different way. Like I really would be. But like because we can even talk about it, the environments are beautiful.
They are.
There's not that many environments.
And then, for example, one thing's, again, me going into the more devil's advocate area, or more positive, being the non-hater. Art is, in my opinion, phenomenal. Not not necessarily the characters
No, and
themselves.
the characters have
Yeah,
inconsistencies in
they
their
are.
character
There's a
arcs.
lot
It's
of
crazy.
inconsistency for the characters, which is wild. Thinking there's only two of them, but the world art. I did mention it on like when we watched it on the theater as well. For example, the reflections on the water surface, puddles and stuff like that. Like they're really nicely, intricately drawn, and you see that and you're impressed. But then that impression doesn't last
Well, then you
for a
almost have
long
to
time.
question,
Yeah.
hey, is this even meant to be animation sometimes? Like, it
Yeah.
almost feels like, hey, would this be better as a fucking piece of art? Or like a manga or something? Like, I don't know. It
Or
just,
like you said, a short. Like this
yeah,
doesn't have to be.
it's the medium of feature length animation that feels wrong. Like, it doesn't work.
The problem is, I feel like no one can and should kind of deny this, because there's not necessarily a why to this specific one as well. Is that we have so many static, non-changing, like lengthwise scenes where it's like, I kid you all not, the first thing we see of the movie before the title is a 45-second black screen. I'm not kidding.
Oh my
Um,
god, yeah, you're right.
so I'm like, you really did not, add to do that. Like you could have and should have just showed us the title and then started, and that would have saved you a minute of disturbed
We
audience,
are
I guess.
literally
Like
ignoring the fact that there is like a 3-minute scene of
on
just
the
five
yeah.
frames being cycled of them waiting by a fire. Like, I get it, cool shot, whatever, it looks gorgeous. 3 minutes is a long time.
Literally the only changing thing is within the last 30 seconds, and not kidding, within the last 30 seconds the fireplace the fire dies out. But then the previous 2.5 minutes, nothing changes, like nothing. So that type of stuff,
It, it's yeah, again, it's the whole like we aren't
it's almost feels like they were like, we're gonna hit that feature length no matter what,
right.
and then just use the frame. Like
Yeah, no, it's that type of thing when it's one thing when you see these techniques here and there,
yeah.
right? I think we all know the reality of production is hard
And this
and
is an
that
86 movie too. A
yeah,
lot
yeah.
of old classics do
Yeah,
that,
we
but
like
like
I understand that it's not always easy and you want to make it
yeah.
happen. But unfortunately, like if you want art to be presentable and ultimately long lasting, like there's certain things that you just simply have to do, and like you can't use money saving techniques everywhere.
No,
Or if
yeah.
you're going to, be smarter about it. Like you can't just pan every fucking time. There's more techniques than like making
No.
your background interesting, And you
Yeah.
can't just hold a shot static on a wide. You can't just rely on your backgrounds. Like even if this movie isn't about being character focused, cool. Make the objects a bit more interesting. Like, not
Exactly.
exactly just the background, because the background it is very much character background. There's not like in between, there's not props besides the egg, which is just white. There's nothing visually interesting to
Yeah.
look at. Like I was like, oh, she has a jar of jam, and then like lasts like a minute, and I was like, okay, I have nothing else to look at now for the next 10 minutes. But all right, we're just gonna
Fisherman.
because also it's the fact that the backgrounds repeat that pisses me off the most. That it's like, oh sure, we really care about it. It's really pretty. I love the dark gray. Oh, it is a nice tone, like a dark gray and blue. I like it. But at the same time, it's like, okay, then do something different every scene if that's going to be your focus. Like make the selling point actually sell it and not be the one saving grace.
Yeah. No, I hear you. And it's tough. Again, even for myself, there's so much, like so many good things that I can say, which I've already said. So it is what it is. It was lackluster. I will give Mamoru Oshii and like generally the crew the benefit of the doubt, assuming it was relatively a new experience for all of them, creating a feature length, super like art house kind of um animation movie, and it did influence a lot of things. So within that alone, it holds a valuable place. And even though I, for the love of me, can't recommend this to someone being like, yeah, just, recommend me a good anime movie. if someone was like, I want a recommendation so I can get where this Dark Souls, dark fantasy kind of like Japanese influence came from, which would be a super niche ask for a recommendation, but for those people out there, I know you're there. I can recommend this, not in a theater, by the way. If you can't find it at your
If
home,
you can watch it at home, turn it on 2x
yeah,
speed here and there.
uh, like do that. I can still recommend it for its importance in the culture and influence. But other than that, for me, this is gonna be a difficult
I mean,
one. Yeah.
when the best thing you can say about something is, oh, it's influence based on its
Yeah.
aesthetic, there's issues with it.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, like I will say, to wrap it up, talking about my personal tastes, like I think someone who watches this and like has literally no context about me might think I hate things that are low dialogue and also
Yeah.
like it's very slow.
No, he also hated Stampede.
Like I love things that are very
Yeah.
slow. I mean, I would say that I'm maybe someone who's a bit more biased towards strong, nuanced, finessing dialogue than like something like Lycoris Recoil. But at the same time, it's like, no, I like things that are very slow, and I have like things that are like very low dialogue. Like I would, if you want to compare this to something, compared to like Nier Automata, where it's like Nier Automata is like
Yeah.
phenomenal, like I would say it's not my absolute favorite, but it's like phenomenal, like environmental storytelling, passive storytelling, lots of leaving up to interpretation. That's done with a lot more care and detail in comparison to this, which it felt like, okay, we just want to try to do something, so let's make it happen. I mean, I'm also someone who is like, when I see this movie, there's a certain meme that is like a writer yelling, where he says, "I've seen authors who write using subtext, and they're all fucking cowards," which I think subtext is fine, and I think leaving things up to interpretation is fine. But I think ultimately not having anything you're willing to stand on in a piece of art is a bit cowardly. I'm a big someone who's like, I'm someone who's really big on like, you need to be willing to stand on something for your art, or like at least stand on your artistic vision. I feel like this movie is so scared to do anything, and it's like it only cares about its aesthetic, and even then, it doesn't put its all into its aesthetic. And I'm like, for me, you need to sell me on something. Like that's art. That's just like, unfortunately, and maybe it's a combination of art and commerce, but you got to stand on something. That's got to be your who you are and your identity. And for me, I think Angel's Egg, its truly greatest failure is the fact that, because it's trying to compromise on so many things related to budget, to length, to like all these side things, it loses its identity beyond just it inspired Dark Souls.
True. I would say, before we completely get out of this section, that if there's any projectionists out there who's watching our podcast, okay? Maybe there is. You never know. Set the volume a little bit lower than what you would do for other movies. Just, that I feel like could help.
Be willing
the
to
audience.
live mix it a little,
Yeah, I feel like that could help the audience a little bit. At least it wouldn't be the exploding dialogue torture as well as what it already is. But yeah, that's our take on the beloved and very well fanned over Angel's Egg.
Low-key, this is my last thing about Angel's Egg. Low-key, the people who love Angel's Egg are people who have only seen Ghibli. I just hate to say it. It's people who've only seen Ghibli and Ghost in the Shell and art house cinema, and they're like, I love art house cinema animation, and they're like, this is the best the genre of anime has to offer, and you people piss me off. So just saying. I don't know.
A lot of controversial takes from Jared this
I
episode.
don't know. Watch something like, these people have not even seen shit like Your Name, which is like one of the most popular Japanese movies ever. Fucking watch Your Name. Just because it's not art house and because it's modern, people don't like it. Just say.
That's true. Yeah.
I will blitz through this because I have somewhere to be in literally 5 minutes.
Yeah.
But for the Manhwa section, we're looking to probably revamp this or do something different, because I quite literally got to the end of our shows for this month and I was like, wow, I really don't want to read Omniscient Reader's Viewpoints.
I'll probably, we'll discuss and I'll throw some ideas too, but we'll probably change what we're going to be reading. It's more than likely going to be something probably not Manhwa and more on the lines of manga.
Yeah, I'm just not interested in getting a little power fantasy kick.
Yeah.
It's not my thing.
Though I will throw some random titles that I feel like not too bad. Like there's some I'm reading right now, but they're bad. So I'll throw in some not too bad ones here and there, not for discussion, but just so you all can have like, oh, this was recommended on a show at some point, kind
Mm-hmm.
of thing. Because I feel like there isn't enough Manhwa content in general out there yet. So just to push a bit.
And then for what we are watching / seasonals,
Yeah.
I've not watched a ton of seasonals. I'm keeping up with Campfire Cooking. I will for sure. I know I've said it like past 2 episodes. Talk about summer
So, but
2025 ending.
yeah,
but
but here is the thing
eventually.
though. For the next episode, we're planning.
Don't.
No.
I will mention it at the very end. We'll go
Okay,
over
I
it.
got you.
But the one thing I have been watching, which simply because I can do it on my side monitor and it's very
Okay.
simple, is I've been watching Pokemon because I'm
Oh,
a
yeah,
ginormous
yeah.
Pokemon fan, as I mentioned. I watched Pokemon Journeys for about 6 episodes. Realized I fucking hate Go as a character because he doesn't struggle or do anything, and he's just an advertisement for Pokemon Go. And then I watched Pokemon Horizons, which people may know as the first Pokemon without Ash as the main character. And I actually really like it. I think it's a really nice change of pace. It starts from ground zero, and it's like character dealing with anxiety and fits
Yeah,
this
yeah,
generation
yeah.
of kids a lot better. Have you? You've mentioned some seasonal. You said like
Yeah, so seasonals. Right now, the last one I did watch and kinda enjoyed, kind of skeptical, is something called One Dance, with a W, by the way. It's WAN dance. It's nice. It's a dance slice of life / romance anime. So maybe actually you might even enjoy it, though I doubt it because it's 3D, not fully, but dancing sequences are 3D, which unfortunately in this case, for example, I'd argue otherwise for Stampede, but for this one, it's not a good selling point. I wish they would do it in 2D, but it is 3D. But nonetheless, it's still tolerable enough. It's not like Kingdom Season 1. And yeah, I'm enjoying it so far. I enjoy the dynamics between the characters more so than the 3D dancing parts, to be honest. But it's still, you know, intriguing enough for me to follow it. But we'll see how that goes.
And that said, that is the end of episode 5. Sorry, we have to quickly
Yeah.
rush through it.
And now that's what I
Yeah.
was mentioning. For
Yeah.
next episode, we're gonna be doing.
It'll be creating our My Anime List accounts, and we're going to be going over a ton of different shows that we've already covered on the show and giving them scores, as well as kind of debating where they should be placed, and as well as finishing up some seasonal wrap up. There will be
Exactly.
a lot more seasonal wrap up for summer 2025, not so much for fall 2025 because we're not watching much stuff, but we will be kind of taking a step back and going over what we've already gone over, which is like at least 15 shows, if not more, considering the seasonals. So there'll be a lot of stuff that we'll be talking about. And we'll also probably include some outside stuff there just to talk about it. So it'll be a nice change of pace.
So that's why if you felt for this episode seasonal stuff a bit lackluster, don't worry. Next episode is going to be a lot more My Anime List account, like anime picks plus seasonals, and a lot of, spontaneous conversations in regards to animes that are happening right now.
A lot less
So
structured of a show. It'll be a lot less structured.
So
more tangents.
Stay tuned for that, and y'all have a good one.
Thanks for watching.